What's going on, everybody? Jackson Fuller alongside Owen Hassell. We're officially more than halfway through the high school football season, Owen. We're at week 7 now, and a really interesting week in the Mid-Eastern Conference, I think. We came into the week saying it felt like a wide-open league, at the most 5 teams with a shot at winning a conference championship. And my opinion on both of those statements hasn't changed after 1 week of the regular season in the Mid-Eastern Conference.
Can it get any wider?
No.
That might be the question. And really, just about any team has a chance, and not just because there's been 1 week played in the season, of course, mathematically, but what you saw from every team was, okay, you could be in this still by the 3rd or 4th week of the conference season. It's going to be really interesting because the last few years, people have already just thrown their hands up and go, well, I guess it's Hoggard and Hanover again, and that's not going to be the case this time.
Will that Hoggard-Hanover game at the end of the year have any importance whatsoever?
Well,
other than it being a rivalry game, that those two teams, it's the biggest game on both of those teams' schedules every year. Will it play any factor into the conference championship, and for that matter, one is a 3A, one's a 4A school playoff seeding?
I think the bigger thing is going to be by that time playoffs, because I do think by then, if there is one team that could pull away and win this conference, it would be New Hanover. If you're Hoggard, you might be playing the role of spoiler at that point, to where if you beat Hanover, you could knock them down a couple of seeds in the playoffs, and that makes a big difference. And if you're Hoggard, you might be fighting for a playoff spot at that point. So there's still going to be plenty to play for with that game, beyond just longtime rivals in the same town.
Absolutely. Let's get to the games this week, and we'll talk a little bit about what we saw last week. First up, I want to start with West Brunswick at Laney. It's the only matchup this week involving two 1-0 teams. The Trojans had a 21-2 victory over Ashley at home. First game at their new turf. Comfortable. They did have 3 starters go down with injury in that game: Amarion Reed, Luke King, and Javion McCray. Javion McCray, obviously a huge loss. Those other 2 guys are also starters on defense, though. On the other side, Laney, 0-3 coming into last week. They beat Topsail 26-21. I think I was talking to you. I think that's a game maybe Topsail wins 7 out of 3 times, but the Buccaneers, they made the big plays when they needed to. And heck, from going 0-3 to now, all of your goals are right in front of you in the Mid-Eastern Conference. If Laney can win this game at home against a Trojans team that may or may not be a little banged up coming in, 2-0, they're right in that championship discussion.
Yeah, once again, new season like we discussed last week. And when it comes to Laney, that tough non-conference schedule, I think we've discussed that too. Like, will it be beneficial in the conference? It probably wouldn't hurt as long as you didn't have injuries. And maybe in that game, those last moments is when Laney said, okay, we've been here. Yeah. We can do this. You were at the game, so I know you have more about that.
And they have, one thing, talking to Coach Yeoman after the game, he didn't necessarily know what his team was going to bring out against Topsail. That's not a bad thing. It's just, this is a young team. A lot of guys on this football team, this is their first year of real varsity meaningful minutes. And when you go through a tough non-conference schedule where you don't win a game, he was a little concerned what was their mindset going to be, but he knew that they were still a close-knit group, and he couldn't have been more pleased with how they came out, and they executed their game plan. They controlled the ball, kept Cody Wallace off the field for as much as possible, and the defense, it struggled containing Gavin Ellis all night, but when they needed one stop, they got it, and that's the hallmark of a good team, really. And I think this Laney team, they always have a ton of talent. It was a young team coming into the season. It's getting older every single game now, with guys like quarterback Jordan Cole, his first signature performance. The defense looked really good on at times on Friday night. So I think the Buccaneers, they're 1-3, but they have to like where they are at the season point right now.
Yeah, absolutely. One more time, new season, conference,
exactly.
And not just that, but such a wide open conference that Laney, yes, has had the talent the past couple of years. I always kind of halfway joke that they win the team photo conference championship at each year. When you look at them in a team photo and you go, wow, look at some of these guys. And then they have games where they've been right there against Hanover, against Hoggard.
Topsail
last year against Hoggard.
Right.
I was at that game. They could have very easily won that game, and the last couple years also, I would contend Laney's had one of the top 3 defenses in the Mid-Eastern Conference. I don't know if that's changed a whole lot this year, even with a lot of new faces.
Yeah,
So
and even with a lot of good defenses. And I think the defenses for most of these teams are ahead of where the offenses are at this point of the season. And West Brunswick, I think West Brunswick's got the best defense in the area this year. If those 3 guys are out, maybe Laney has a better defense on Friday night. We'll see. That's going to be a low-scoring game, I think. But really fascinating to see which one of those teams wins, and both of those teams have tough opponents next. West Brunswick's going to have to go to Hoggard next Friday, and Laney is going to have to go to New Hanover. So, speaking of Hanover, that's the next game I kind of want to discuss. They're going to be hosting Topsail on Friday night. That's the game I'm going to go to this Friday. Both teams 4-1. The Pirates got their first real test of the season on Friday. Lost to Laney, but I still was impressed with the team overall. The offense it's talented. They made a couple of mistakes. Otherwise, they could have easily scored 35 points on a good Laney defense. If you're the Pirates, like we said, this is wide open. One loss doesn't eliminate you, but it makes your margin of error a lot smaller. They've kind of got to win out to try and, if they really do want to win the conference. New Hanover, we've kind of discussed. At this point, we have to consider them the favorite right now just because they've handled their business against the teams they should beat. They played a really good Jack Britt team through overtime. Mackay Stanley's been terrific. I think the Wildcats in this game probably favored, but Topsail's offense could score 35 points and put the pressure on Chase Nixon in the offense to do something it hasn't done against a great team yet.
It's always awkward for me to say the term outscore teams. Isn't that what you're supposed to do? You're supposed to score more points than the other team, but that term makes a little more sense when we're discussing Topsail right now and the options it does have on offense and how it can just really to outscore other teams. They're going to give up some points on defense, and that will definitely be one heck of a challenge to stop New Hanover's running attack. If it can manage the running attack, which is basically what Laney did against Topsail. Remember last week we had discussed, can Topsail establish enough of a run game? Maybe it did, maybe it didn't, but 4th and 3.
They threw the ball. But you can't really blame them there.
Can you not get 3 yards on a run there?
Well, I don't. I think that's in most high school football teams, 4th and 3, they're running the football. But with Topsail this season, with Gavin Ellis out wide, he had almost 200 yards receiving before that play. If he makes the catch, he gets over 200 yards. I think that's probably their best chance at getting 3 yards is throwing that slant to him that they had so much success with. But you're right. I think one of the big reasons Laney beat Topsail was they were able to pick up 5 yards on first down running the football and put their offense in good positions. New Hanover's offense so far this year has proven to be a better running attack than Laney. That's something Topsail has to be able to contain if they want a chance of going on the road and beating Hanover this Friday night. How about North Brunswick and South Brunswick? The Cougars almost pull off the upset of the program when Friday night they lost to Hoggard 10-9. The only difference was a blocked extra point. South Brunswick finally home. They haven't played a single home game yet this season as they've waited on their turf to be installed, but they're finally going to be in Southport hosting rival North Brunswick. And you talk about 2 teams that have shown signs of growth in the area this year. It's these 2 teams specifically, and I think both of these teams are going to be really desperate for a win in this game to kind of jumpstart, hopefully, a better Mid-Eastern Conference season than they've had in years past.
I'd like to say, first off, you peer pressured me into saying, well, Hoggard's going to win easily last week.
I did.
That was you. Look at the tape. Look at last week's video. You'll see it. I believe that South Brunswick could really hang with Hoggard and potentially pull something off. But I was like, no, well, Jackson's looking at this. He's seen a lot more games. I'll go with the whole Hoggard wins by 20 idea. But wow. And if you're Rocky Lewis and you're the Cougars, you have as much faith in your guys as ever, even though the disappointment of losing by a point.
And Rocky told Joey, our star news UNCW reporter Joey Chandler, who covered that game, he thought his team was the better team Friday night, that they made a couple too many mistakes, but he thought they outplayed Hoggard. And not a lot of times a South Brunswick coach has been able to say that in recent years, or any years.
Yeah, and what is it going to mean to be back home? You can't underestimate that when you've been on the road so much. Maybe a difference maker is North Brunswick's been playing on turf. On their own field. Yeah. South Brunswick, I don't think, probably has been on that turf field yet, haven't been allowed to. Wonder if that's going to make any type of difference. And obviously, Brian Davis, North Brunswick, playing pretty well. Yeah, they are. They lost 35-6 to New Hanover, but that's not a good matchup for them. Like at this point,
North Brunswick against the likes of Laney and Hoggard and New Hanover, it's still just not a great matchup because they can't match their power up front and the depth that those teams have. Against the South Brunswick team, they match up a lot better, but the same goes for South Brunswick. You would think they don't really match up with the bigger schools here in Wilmington, but they just played Hoggard to a 10-9 game. I think that's going to be a really interesting game, not only for those two teams, but if North Brunswick goes out and beats South Brunswick, what does that say about Hoggard, who New Hanover beat the crap out of South Brunswick or North Brunswick this week?
Here we go.
What does that say about Hoggard? The transitive property doesn't work in high school sports, but Hoggard, the Vikings at Ashley this week. Look, I think, if you're Hoggard, you're not thrilled with how the season's going so far, but you're still 1-0 in the Mid-Eastern. You're still trying to get some of these young guys up to speed. At this point for the Vikings, I think every game it's just going to be let's take care of business and get a win. And if they can do that, they're going to be thrilled. They were thrilled to get it against Purnell Sweat when I was there. I wasn't there on Friday night. I don't know what the team vibe was having that close of a game against South Brunswick, but against Friday at Ashley, we have to see the Vikings start to put together a complete performance, don't we?
Why are we not talking about Ashley just a little bit, though?
Well, we will. Absolutely will.
Because Ashley held its own against West Brunswick.
Absolutely.
You can make that argument.
Mm-hmm.
If you're Coach Wilton Helms, we've said it a few other times, that these little victories, moral victories, whatever else you want to call them, you have to lean on those quite a bit. You still see players, it looks like, being relatively positive, understanding what's going on this year and building a program. You see the social media posts Ashley's putting out. They're still keeping things as together as you would expect with the record being what it is. But why, if you're Ashley, you're not supposed to win anyway.
No.
But you're home. You're playing Hoggard, and Hoggard's not having the year it's had the last couple of seasons. Why can't you put some faith in your guys that?
Absolutely. And I talk about this ridiculous transitive property. Ashley, we lost by 4 to South Brunswick, who lost by 1 to Hoggard. We have a chance here. And I know, Logan Teeter at quarterback has been, not great for the Screaming Eagles, but he has been a very tough-nosed quarterback who has found a way to pick up yardage with Jackson Jones, their running back, and Cameron Lesko, his big receiver. I mean, the Ashley defense, they only gave up 21 points to West Brunswick. Can they hold Hoggard to less than 20 points? Maybe. If you do that, you're in the game. So
I'm not falling for Jackson's peer pressure again this week. I did it last week, and that was wrong of me. I think Ashley hangs in there for at least the first half, and we're going to look at another score like you looked at last week with South Brunswick and Hoggard and went, very interesting. I think that's possible.
It will. It's certainly, I think, like we said this last week, every week in the Mid-Eastern Conference, we're going to learn something new. And I don't know if you could have said that the past 2 years where, okay, Hoggard is playing North Brunswick, New Hanover is playing South Brunswick, 2 blowouts, that might not be the case this year, where these teams that are the favorites or the historical powers are going to have to fight with every team or every week in the Mid-Eastern Conference. And, we saw it last week with Hoggard. Do we see it this week with New Hanover against Topsail? And the West Brunswick Laney game is a funny kind of matchup where you've got a team, West Brunswick, that is a senior-laden group that had high expectations coming in, with a Laney team that's young and didn't necessarily have those high expectations, but they find themselves on even ground with West Brunswick right now in the conference standings. So another fascinating week. Like I said, I'll be at Legion Stadium Friday night covering that Topsail at New Hanover game. Noah Powers, our wonderful correspondent, will be over in Bucktown covering West Brunswick at Laney. And those are the only 2 games we're going to be able to cover this week, but we'll have coverage from all across the area afterwards, catching up with coaches and trying to see exactly how the Mid-Eastern Conference teams and games fared. As always, thank you guys for watching so much at Star News Varsity on Twitter and Facebook.com/Star News Varsity. Should be another fun week of local high school football, and let's see. We're definitely going to have one 2-0 team in the Mid-Eastern Conference this week, but do we have more than one? I think we will, but hey, you never know. And South Brunswick and Hoggard kind of proved last week, and everything's kind of up for grabs this year in the Mid-Eastern Conference. So thank you guys for watching. Everybody have a great week.